Happy Sunday afternoon. Welcome to the Zig Zone here on WBGU 88.1 FM, Falcon Media Sports Network's flagship sports radio show. I'm Holden Ruck, your host once again, joined here by three talented analysts from the Falcon Media Sports Network, starting all the way to my right in the usual Ben Korak seat. We got Henry Costco. Henry, how are we doing today?
Yeah, I'm doing good. Softball took 1 out of 3 against Northern Illinois in DeKalb over the weekend. I'll talk a bit about that.
Our sports content director for Falcon Media Sports Network, Lucas Kleinmeyer. How you doing, Lucas?
I'm doing pretty good, Holden. We're winding down here in the school year. A couple weeks left. Baseball right now in action. Lost the first 2 games against Miami, trying to get at least a win in that series.
And coming out of the bullpen for the first time in a hot minute here, Caden Knapp joining us. How we doing, Caden?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on air. I'm excited to talk some Falcon sports with you guys.
We're going to go ahead and get started with the most recent completed action, as baseball is currently still in play with a 5-4 margin that the Red Hawks of Miami currently lead them by. So as that game continues, before we talk about that, we're going to go to some softball. So Henry, why don't you go ahead and take us away? Let us know what's going on with softball going against NIU this past weekend.
Yeah, so softball coming off of a 6-1 homestand. It was last couple of weeks before they went into kind of an extended road trip. This week they had 2 games against Akron on Tuesday. Both of those were losses, and then they had a full 3-game series against Northern Illinois over this weekend. They played 2 yesterday on Saturday, and then they played 1 here on Sunday. Not a lot of offense in those games. I think to say the least. 1-0 win for Bowling Green in Game 1, and then a 2-0 win and a 4-0 win for NIU in Games 2 and 3. So a lot of defense that we'll be talking about mostly.
And what do you think? Would you attribute it? You know, there's definitely some talented pitchers going on for both teams there. What do you attribute these 0 results to? Specifically, let's start with the Falcons. You know, a 0-run result in 2 out of the 3 contests. You know, where do you point to?
Well, I mean, NIU is a good defensive team overall. They're the 4th best team in the MAC in terms of team ERA. So a lot of kind of the defensive metrics that they were putting up were similar to what we saw against Ball State last weekend, and they put up a lot more of that. But I was disappointed in general just with how the offense performed, especially bouncing back. They had 7 hits in Game 1. Didn't manage to do much offensively in that game, and then 3 hits in Game 2, which didn't really put anything up on the stat sheet. 3 hits and no walks or any sort of other on-base production. They were pretty lackluster in that game, and then only 5 here on Sunday. So I'm sure Coach Gardner would have liked to see a lot more offensive production there. I don't really think there's any way of going around that. I think it was just kind of a bad performance from the offense altogether.
And I do think in spite of that bad offensive performance, when you look at, you know, the more defensive side for the Falcons, you know, those results, if you only look at it from that defensive angle, look pretty respectable.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, they kept it close. Mackenzie Krafschick, fantastic performance there in Game 1. Her first career complete game shutout, 7 innings, 0 earned runs, although did allow 7 hits, but on those 2 strikeouts, she had a fantastic game, and they needed it in that one for sure. The 1-0 win. The offense only provided a run via a sacrifice foul out from Cameron Kaufman. So they needed that complete game shutout, and that was a great performance for her. Great day. And then Morgan Beckham really produced in the second game. After that, did allow those 2 earned runs, but went through 6 innings, just over 80 total pitches in that game, which was great to see from the freshman. I would say that was probably her best outing overall. She's kind of been building up to something like this, where she's been in increased roles, increased number of pitches, increase in terms of pressure ability in those outings, in terms of outcome of the game, and it was good to see her have a performance like that, even though it was outshined by not much offensive help there in the 2-0 loss. And then Mackenzie came out in Game 3. I think NIU kind of had a good look on her after Game 1, because it was only 5 innings, allowing 4 earned runs there in Game 3, which isn't really bad, all things considered, but it's just bad when your offense doesn't produce any runs. You know, if you're not you can give up 2 earned runs, 4 earned runs typically, and you'll be fine in most games when your offense isn't producing, anything more than 3 hits, 5 hits. They're not producing, more than 1 run in 3 games. There's not much you can really do from the defensive standpoint.
Yeah, and if you chart their trajectory back over their last 5 contests, look at the Northern Illinois series, and then their doubleheader against Akron. They had, in the second game of the doubleheader against Akron, they had 6 runs and a loss. Outside of that, in those last 5, 2 runs and a loss, 1 and a win, shutout. So, definitely feels like a bit of sputtering compared to what we've seen from the season, where even in losses to Ball State, putting up 4 or 5 runs, really kind of a script flip where, the pitching and the defensive play was kind of more at fault for the losses there. Do you see a direct line to resolving this, or do you think it's just kind of a bad day, bad weekend?
It's just a bad weekend. These sort of things are going to happen. NIU is a extremely defensive team. They rely on these kind of stellar pitching performances to get their wins. They're the worst team in the MAC in terms of pretty much every offensive statistic. They're only a 260 team batting average, and if you look at a lot of their defensive metrics as well as their pitching metrics, they lead a lot of those categories. Carlson Madison is 4th in the MAC in ERA, and then they have Daniel Stewart, who also is a great pitcher for them as well, who had a fantastic outing in Game 2 of this series. So NIU plays this sort of game, and when you're not scoring, you really play into their wheelhouse, and they're around kind of a mid-table team, I would say, in terms of the MAC. So this is a team that BG directly competes with in terms of, I think, just maybe talent level, maybe expectations. As we're sort of this far into the season, this is a team that matches up pretty evenly with BG, and I think we saw that just in terms of some of these results. Well,
going bigger picture, Henry, because I remember last week on the Zig Zone, Ben was talking about what to expect for softball this week, and especially with Akron and NIU, because as you mentioned, those were pretty important games in the MAC in terms of, like, are they going to get one of those last spots for the MAC tournament in May? And I told him, how many wins would you want this weekend or for the weekend to be considered a success? And he said, if you get 3 out of 5, you can chalk it up as a success, which means you probably took 1 from Akron and you would win the series against NIU. They took 2 out of the 5. Yeah. So for you personally, is this weekend a failure? Is it a success? Is it kind of like one where you kind of just wash your hands and you kind of move on? Because I'm looking at the stands right now, and I do believe they're out that last spot in 7th.
Yeah.
And they're down by 2 with NIU, and NIU now has a 2-game hold over them in the MAC, and that's not good considering they beat them head-to-head.
And I do want to add, just before you answer that, Henry, not only the NIU being right in front of them, Akron also the next spot ahead. So you're not only dropping contests against the 2 teams that are in the most hotly contesting you for that spot, but also I think that it was 1 out of 5. It wasn't 2. They got swept by Akron.
Yeah, it's been 1 of 7 in terms of these. Or I think one. They've only won 1 of the last 7 because they lost 2 to Ball State, lost 2 to Akron, and now they lost 2 out of 3 to NIU. And I think this week was kind of a good tell in terms of where the team is at, because you can look at the first 2 series that they played. Obviously, they went 1-2 in the opening series against Buffalo, and then they swept Kent State. Buffalo is 3-8 right now, 10th in the conference. Kent State is 0-11 right now, still winless, and they're last in the conference. And then you look at NIU, who's 7-7 right now, and then Akron, who's at 6-6. Those are the teams that are going to be competing for those final MAC tournament spots. As we get towards the end of the year, Miami, Ohio, Ball State are pretty much going to have those 3 spots locked up, and it's going to be Central, Akron, NIU, and then BG, Western, Toledo towards the end of the season to see who's going to get those spots. And I think this week was a good tell just in terms of where the team is at and against these teams that they're going to be competing with for that spot. And I think this kind of gives us a good look of, okay, maybe they're not quite there yet in terms of competing for that tournament spot.
And I think the not quite there yet that you're saying is a really important lens to look at it through when you consider, I know we can always call back to, what we've looked at as expectations for this team heading into the year. And I think the fact that they're even in contention with a month to play, we're ahead of the last year. You can't always have it, flip script overnight, and I think that is the important thing to focus on when analyzing this team. Not necessarily are they automatically competing for a MAC title, but are they getting better? Are they keeping themselves in that contention conversation? And even though I think with a lot of optimism for this team that the last 7 really haven't gone as you would hope, save for one against a 1-0 this past weekend, I feel like failure is almost too absolute. You know what I mean?
For sure.
That's how I feel about it.
And also too, like, you can speak more about this, Henry, as well. But like, I think for me that makes the Western Michigan series, after the Notre Dame game, which non-conference, good experience for the team, and that it's on ACCN network. That's cool. But that makes that Western Michigan series all the more important because Western Michigan is that spot below them right now in the MAC, and they can just take care of that series and even like sweep them. Then they give themselves like cushion before that spot, and they can even like push their way up towards that last spot as well. Yeah,
if I'm just gonna say this right now, the last stretch of the schedule is really, really tough for them because you look at their 2 easiest games right now, or 2 easiest series, are Toledo and Western, 2 teams that were slated near middle of the MAC, slated to be in the MAC tournament. Those are just teams that have had rough starts to MAC play, and then you have series, one at home against Western coming up this week, and then Toledo on the road, which is coming up in a couple weeks, and then you pair that with series against at Central, who are 8-4 in MAC play so far, and then at home a doubleheader against Ohio and a doubleheader against Miami of Ohio, who are the 2 clear favorites in the MAC. And I mean, you look at these teams. Ohio and Miami are these teams that they have star players. We saw when Ball State kind of came to BG how kind of a difference, just talent-wise, teams like that have at the top of the MAC. It's those 3. It's Ball State, OU, and Miami. And Miami is a very similar team to Ball State, where they have that really good offensive player. They have that really good defensive ace pitcher who can come in at any given time and give you good innings. But OU is a bit better than that. They have 2 of those aces in Anna Wise and Mickey Living. So just some teams to watch out for, and some tough schedules coming up ahead.
And not only that, but I think you can look at the Western Michigan series and argue, that's, as you're kind of saying, not one of the strongest teams they have to face yet. But as far as the current standings go for them right now, that, might be the one that they can least afford to drop the series. If Western Michigan wins the series, they leapfrog them in standings, being only behind them right now. Western Michigan at 4-7 conference, Bowling Green 5-8.
Yeah, I mean, Western, if they're going to want to have a shot, I don't think they're going to have a realistic shot at winning either of the games against OU or Miami. I think saying that they can take one, sure, but I don't think they're going to win the series, either of those. Probably. So they need to win, I think, at least 2 out of 3 against Western, and then they'll need to get 1, maybe 2 against Central, and at least probably 2 against Toledo. If they're going to want to have a shot. Just looking at some of these teams, they already lost, 2 to Akron. They lost 2 out of 3 to NIU, which are those teams that they're competing with. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens there.
Yeah, Henry, do you think that it plays in the Falcons' favor at all, the fact that they have 3 of their final MAC series at home? Because this season they're 6-3 at home, whereas you look at away games, 2-13 in true away games, and neutral games, they're 5-8.
I mean, yeah, the home and field advantage kind of goes out the window when you're playing OU or Miami. You get that early in the year with the kind of the wind and the really cold weather that we get up here, like in the Kent State
it's
series.
still happening, by the way. It's still cold
and
windy.
it's still cold and windy here. Yeah. You don't get that as much in Southern Ohio, but a lot of that bad record on the road is just due to tough opponents in these early season tournaments that have really kind of racked that up. And they have definitely played worse on the road. We've seen that this week with some troubles that they've had. But yeah, it is nice that they're playing, these top tier MAC teams at home for sure. That's going to give them maybe a little bit of an extra push to, extra motivation to really put their best towards these teams.
I'm glad you mentioned that too, because with like the rest of their schedule, like the strength of scheduling, how hard they have it towards the end of the season. And like Ken mentioned, they do have a lot of games at home, but like you're kind of saying too, is like, it doesn't matter if it's home or away. Like sometimes they just have better players than you, or they're just more talented, or they're at a further point right now than what Bowling Green is. But you have the 2 games against Ohio, then that 3-game series Central, like you mentioned, then obviously Toledo, Toledo's below Bowling Green in the standings, but it's always a rivalry game.
Yeah.
So that's always something to factor in too. So like that's a really, really tough stretch. I mean, that's 8 games after the 3 against Western Michigan, because then after that you just have, the Miami, which you can just chalk up as a loss right now as it is, and then you have just Robert Morris. So like you're not wrong, and that kind of opened my eyes at least of just how many opportunities this team has now to prove themselves, because I don't know outside Western Michigan like how many of those series they're going to be favored and like going up against.
None of them. They're going to be underdogs in probably every series going in. Maybe favored in the first game of the Western series. Yeah. We'll see about that.
And that's crazy too, because like now that paints this weekend even bigger, is like, wow, that was kind of a big opportunity with those teams in your bubble, and you only won 2 out of the 5 games.
And another thing, it's really, really unfortunate, kind of, tying back to the, the concept of the home field. The only one where it's like, okay, this team's not a world beater is Central, or a rival is, Central Michigan, and that's like your farthest travel too. You've got a rivalry game is always going to be serious, and you're at them. You've got the 2 tough teams, Miami, Ohio, like you said, at home, and then having to go to Mount Pleasant. It's really is kind of a gauntlet down this stretch. How do you feel looking ahead, just because we didn't really touch on it as we kind of went through those teams? What's your feeling on the Toledo series? I only ask because you touted them as probable underdogs in the rest of the remaining series, but they are ahead of Toledo in the standings. So just, where does that come from, I guess, in your mind?
Well, Toledo went on an 11-game losing streak going into MAC play after they lost Eli Enriquez, their big offensive player, and she's come back this past week, and although they did lose 4 straight MAC games, they lost 2 to Akron, they lost 2 to Miami before, that was after they beat Ball State once, and they beat Akron 8-0. And this week at home, upon Enriquez's return, they just swept Michigan State 5-3, 6-5. So they're going to have a series at Ohio, and then they're really going to get their confidence built. They play Buffalo, they play BG, and then they play Kent and NIU. So they pretty much have all of those tough teams out of the way. They've already played Ball State. They've already played Miami. So they're going to be hungry, and this is a team that's very talented, and they got that star player back, so they're going to have a lot of motivation in these games late in the year.
And they've kind of survived through that tougher part of their schedule, kept themselves in contention, although albeit currently low in the standings, but there's enough season left. I can see where you're saying that. That makes sense, and certainly seems a tall order teed up for the Falcons going to Toledo there.
I think so too. Like, we're talking about like the hard upcoming stretch they have, and they're 13-24 overall, and I think to the neutral viewer, they're like, oh, they're not a good softball team. They're 3.351 on the season, but we've harped on how they've doubled their wins from last year, now at 13, and they're not only competing, they're now in contention to make the MAC tournament while they have a tough schedule down the stretch. Like, that's super impressive for where this program was and where this team was just last season. So kudos to Michelle Gardner and the whole staff for what they did in just 1 year.
I mean, the impressive part is just they're competing every game in MAC play. At least the Ball State series was tough for sure, but in these games on the road, DeKalb, that's a 4.5-hour trip out there. You've been out there, Lucas. It's not an easy place to go, especially with the weather that they've played in past couple of weeks. And they went out there and they competed in all 4 games. They didn't get blown out. They won one, even though it was 1-0. They still won a game, and they competed in the Akron games. They almost came up with a win there in game 2 after it was only a 6-7 loss there. So that's just what is important, because a lot of these games, these MAC games, the team that won only 3 games last year, they just weren't competing. They might get mercy in 2 out of 3 games in a lot of occasions, and this team isn't doing that this year, and that's just what Gardner likes in this team, is that they fight no matter what, and they're showing improvement regardless.
Yeah, and like you said too, like circling back to what you said, like the first game, like the one when they had against NIU, the first game, like you pitched a shutout, so like that's super impressive too. And it was a correct me, who was that again for Bowling Green who pitched the shutout?
Mackenzie Krafchick.
Yeah. So like, and that was her first career shutout.
Yeah.
So like, that's an amazing in itself. Like one for her individually too, but also for the team as well.
Yeah.
And NIU's not a great offensive team like you mentioned too, but that does so much for a team just confident wise.
Yeah.
Saying that you have that on your pitching staff is that you have a player that can pitch a shutout in the MAC if you need it in order to get a big win. So that's good too.
Yeah. This quick shout out. Cameron Kaufman made her return this week after she was dealing with a bit of an injury, and getting her back in at shortstop is a big deal for the team, especially defensively. Giving up 7 hits in that game and still, giving Krafchick the shutout is a big shout out to the defense with them being able to hold on to that, because we've seen, especially here, a lot of the games that are played at Meserve are decided by whichever team makes the most errors, especially when it's a low-scoring, game like that. Like those games that they played against NIU. So that defensive performance was, huge, and them being able to consistently allow under 5 runs in all 3 games this series is just a big deal regardless.
Something that I think is really worth noting, historically, I think looking across sports, I've been kind of a proponent that we shouldn't focus too much on the non-conference, but I do think it always does warrant mentioning, early in the season, this, team's still figuring themselves out, getting used to, their new coaching staff. They were able to compete with a number of, talented teams, going close with Connecticut, Wisconsin, keeping it really close with Oklahoma, one of the best teams in the country at that mark. Again, just really attests how far they've come, and I think it's one of the really interesting things about having all the different sports that we pay attention to and keep track of is just how different you have to analyze them, because you can't there are teams with expectations, and you can't take a moral victory out of a loss. A lot of times it's maybe you should just win, you should just get better, you need to find a way. But with this team, I think it's pretty fair to say that's just not the case. They're not there yet, but there is so much positive trajectory for them.
This team has had a really, really tough schedule, and they've made the best of the situation. They made the best of the situation in the non-conference. What you could have done going into the non-conference, you just say, "Oh, we're just going to experiment in all these games. We're just going to put in the freshmen and get them to play in these nice arenas and these nice stadiums down south." But instead, Gardner put their best foot forward in every one of these games, regardless, and they got the results out of it. They almost beat the best team in the country and what would have been the best upset in BG Athletics history if they would have pulled that off in extra innings. They beat Tulsa, which was straight up one of the best teams in the AAC last year, and they're 6-7 in that conference, which is a significantly better conference than the MAC. And they beat the teams that they should be. They beat Green Bay, and they split that doubleheader. They swept Youngstown State. They swept Monmouth earlier in the year. They did have the loss to Abilene Christian, but they beat UIC, and they beat IU Indy in that Hoosier Classic. So they've beat these lesser teams that they really need to beat on paper, and that's kind of been the difference maker for this team.
I always go back to, like you mentioned, Henry, to that Oklahoma loss. Like, if that, in my opinion, is like the best loss, and definitely this year for athletics. So, like, since I've been here, you took the best team in the country to extras, and you did come up with the win, obviously, but that would have been the biggest win ever. But also, too, like you mentioned, too, like I don't think Oklahoma was playing their best players out there to start. And then you force them to play their starters, or at least some of their more high leverage players towards the end of the game, because they're realizing, oh, crap, we thought we were going to have an easier time against Bowling Green because, and I get it, like, Bowling Green wasn't good last year, but you force them to play better players. That's in itself is such a big moral win. Like, players see that and they're like, oh, wow, we actually have something here. Like, we just took the national champions to extra innings. Like, we can do anything almost. That
actually happened in the Oklahoma game, because they had to put in Sam Landry in eighth, who is one of, if not the best pitcher, hands down in Division I. She has a 1.83 so far this year, and they had to put her in the eighth because they didn't want to lose that game, and that's what earns respect for your program, just straight up.
Yeah, it does. And Holden, like you mentioned too, like, obviously here with Bowling Green, it's the same thing with the baseball program too, is like the weather here, by the time the season starts, it's so cold and there's snow and it's windy. Like, you're not going to be able to play, softball out in the conditions the first month of the season or so you're going to be on the road. But like the South Carolina, the Spartan Classic, and then going to Oklahoma, like you mentioned, and going back to South Carolina and then Indiana, and you're basically on the road for a third of your season to start, and you're a brand new coach and a brand new program, and you're basically trying to build stuff on the fly in sort of way. And like, we don't know yet like how much Michelle Gardner felt like she needed to change or fix, or like how they, what they need to do in practice differently, or anything like that. But like, I mean, we'll find out too. But like, that's extremely impressive too. Is like, you have nothing at home. Like, you're not comfortable. Like, you're on the road constantly. You're in hotels. You're traveling on a plane. You're traveling on a bus, long hours. you're with, again, a first year coaching staff, first year everything. You're probably practicing in the visitors' training facilities. And again, you're not comfortable, but you were able to get a couple big wins like the Tulsa win, which is huge, and also have good performance on the road when you're not home for the first third of the season for a first year head coach. Like, that in itself is extremely impressive. And I don't think a lot of people kind of think about that or consider that when you think about it, because, like, even just like traveling for women's basketball this year is like, holy crap, they travel for one game and they have to do all this and they're gone for like this long. I couldn't imagine traveling for softball and then obviously baseball too, like for all these weeks and all these games, and you're away and you're not in your comfort zone for all this time. So I think that's extremely impressive what they did in non-conference play, and they've carried it into MAC.
That's one of those intangibles that I think really, really does fly under the radar and speaks to just the both mental preparation and resiliency of the team and the athletes. I know when the football team, went to their bowl game in Mobile, Alabama, I went on a whirlwind 25-hour trip with the group of our marching band that was able to go, and just the taxing, like that was so taxing, just being up for that span and having to adjust and slight time change, and then we're back. And the fact that to do that with consistency, you're on the road and adjusting, sleeping somewhere unfamiliar, and then trying to bring your A game and compete at an elite level. I mean, just really, really speaks to resiliency about the team that I think has had a far more significant impact throughout the season than was maybe, something we would have noticed at the time. I want to look ahead a little bit because we haven't, super dug into it, but it is kind of the next thing coming up. Notre Dame this Wednesday in South Bend, ACC Network, ESPN, kind of a big stage for the Falcons. That's exciting.
Yeah, that'll be Wednesday night. They pushed that game. I'm pretty sure they pushed it back, right, Lucas?
Yeah, it was originally 5 p.m. and like Holden said, it's now 8 p.m., I believe, because of the national television. So pretty cool. Under the lights for the Falcons. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, Notre Dame, that's a winnable game. Notre Dame is 18-21 overall. They are 6-9 in conference play, so it's not like that's a top 25 team by any means. So look for BG to maybe compete in that one. We'll see what they have.
It feels like it's going to be definitely contingent on getting that offensive performance back on track. I know NIU, as we said, is a defensive team, but hopefully able to muster more than the one run over the 3 games. I want to kind of move to a little bit of a wrap-up with this, but before we do, I've got a couple more things to throw at you, Henry. If you had to pick one big standout, I think I know what your answer is going to be already, but if you had to pick the one biggest positive of the last series, what do you point to?
Of NIU? Yeah, I mean, Mackenzie Krafschick getting her first career complete game shutout is a big deal. She's just one of those players that she was fine last year, and then she's just completely taken off this year. We've seen it with pretty much the whole lineup with Hutter and Hunt and Martin, these players who have just taken off like a rocket compared to their averages under 200, and now their averages over 300. Krafschick got 4-1-2 this year, 22 appearances, 10 starts, almost 70 innings now, allowed 41 earned runs on 20 strikeouts, 331 team batting average, and over 300 ABs. So she's become the innings eater of this team. She threw, it was 14 on Friday. It was 14 combined between Saturday and Sunday. So yeah. I mean, she's done it all, and the pitching staff Scarlett Anderson has struggled lately the past couple of weeks, and Krafschick's been the one who's really been stepping up along with Beckham.
Conversely to that, if there's one thing, obviously you could point to several things. Again, going 2 games with no runs and back-to-back losses is certainly a tough scene. If there's one, not as like a call out of, this player's bad, but if there's one area that you think like a group of people or an athlete could clean up on the most importantly to, change their results in this next week, what would you point to? What do you look to?
Well, I would just look for consistency just within the offense in general, because they have a lot of times where a lot of players go on cold spells for a whole series. Like we saw that kind of this week where Addie had a hit in 2 of the 3 games. Hannah Hunt had a hit in 2 of the 3 games. And other than that, like, there hasn't been much going on the offensive side of the ball. And we saw that last week with Kendall, Ava McKee, who really stepped up. Steph has had a good week, but you had some other players at the top of the lineup like Barrett, like Hutter, who had kind of off weekends for the whole weekend. So you just want to see these players kind of, even it out and just get more consistent overall. I would say in these series, just try to, if you have more players getting a hit in one game as opposed to everyone raining it on, I think that's what they just need to work on there.
And speaking to that, I'm certainly not the expert on the team that you are, but at least from, my perception of what I'm able to follow, it feels like they have, when they've been successful, been a little bit top heavy, and you see a lot of contributions from, a couple of those names, especially, an Addie Martin, a Hannah Hunt. Do you think that, speaking candidly, do you think that they have the depth of consistent hitters, or do you think there's, maybe just more development that, some of those girls need as hitters to be able to get to that level and consistently contribute?
Yeah, I would say it's a mix of both. There's definitely a talent thing there in terms of the ability that the players have to produce on a certain level. I would say a lot of it is just due to a younger bottom half of the team. Kaufman coming back is going to be a big deal because they're relying on some players like Katie Hutter, like Hannah Massaro to play in some positions that they weren't necessarily, you could tell they weren't necessarily super comfortable with. So having, the veterans in there has kind of proven that that's been the better way that they're going to go. And with Kaufman back in the lineup, that sort of thing kind of helps a little bit. But yeah, I would say just younger players who have been getting reps have just been kind of showing their youth a little bit. And that's, of course, natural. And that's a thing that they'll be working on. And we've seen Morgan really progress throughout the year. We've seen Sydney Marshall had a good outing last week. And some of these freshmen, Ava McKee has basically taken Ashley Chevalier's starting job at the catcher position. So they've had some shining moments, but just showing their youth at times as well.
I know Addie Martin's been really good too, as well. Henry, like you mentioned, I know you and Ben and Quark are working on a feature for Falcon Media Sports Network right now, and that too. So looking forward to seeing that as well because she's been spectacular this season.
Yeah, top of the MAC in pretty much every power category. 12 stolen bases on the year. That's most on the team. That's one of the most in the MAC, and she did it while started the season at third, switched over to short, had maybe a couple tough games against Buffalo, and then after that she was pretty completely stellar at short. So she does it with, all three of those categories: offensive, defensive, and then base running as well.
I keep thinking that Lucas and I would get good puns off if this was baseball for the number of times you said stellar, but we'll move past that.
Oh, yeah.
Holden and I looked right at each other. He said stellar, and we went like, "Are you on the same wavelength as me?" Yeah, that was pretty funny.
Definitely locked in.
That's fine. Mine's in the gutter. Sorry, Henry.
Some me serve play doesn't have the same ring to it. Doesn't quite work.
Me surf is pretty stellar, you could say.
Wow, that's definitely one of the all-timer jokes.
One of the Henry Costco jokes of all time. Henry, I don't want to pitch you too simple of a question. Pitch. Okay. Wow.
There we go.
Woohoo!
There we go.
It's coming. It's coming now. Just. Oh my gosh.
The quality decline today. No, I don't want to give you too, simple of a question, but I think it always warrants asking. If you look at this series against Western Michigan, look past the Fighting Irish. They're right beneath BG in the conference rankings right now, and you're currently outside of the tournament bubble. I think it's easy to say you want to win, you don't want to lose, but what is really a disappointing outcome from this weekend?
I look for them to take one, at least. I think I'll be content if they take one. I think if they get swept, then I think there will be some unhappy faces, I think, especially among the coaching staff. I don't think they'll be super happy with a sweep. So I think getting at least one I'll be happy with.
Getting at least one. Is there anything else that, sticks out to you that you feel like warrants mentioning right now? Obviously you can only say so much about one weekend at a time.
Just this team is still 7th in the MAC, so 6 teams make the MAC tournament, so they're still theoretically have a shot at it. Just watch out for them.
Currently on the bubble still. The webs. Oh no, yeah, it does have them at 7th. I misread that earlier. Okay, yeah, 7th in the MAC, right outside of the tournament bubble. You can check out the recaps of this weekend's action of the Falcons at Northern Illinois on bgfalconmedia.com. And that'll wrap us up now for softball. We'll wait to see what they can do coming up soonest this Wednesday in South Bend against the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. We're going to move on and talk a little baseball. We don't have either of our baseball experts today, but we do have, obviously all of the information on what's been going on with them. Caden, you look a little excited.
Oh, yeah, they just tied it. Bowling Green Baseball was trailing 6-4 heading into the bottom of the 7th, and they just scored 2 runs to make it 6-6.
big time catching up there for the Falcons, currently in the bottom of the 7th, as Caden said, 2 outs, and now tied 6-6 with the Red Hawks, who have already won the series by claiming both games of the doubleheader on Friday. Both teams came into that series tied for the best record in the conference with 10-2. Coming out of this series, Miami is going to lead the conference due to, again, winning more out of this series and matching up against each other. It hasn't been a weekend of the Falcons being completely dominated. That first game went 5-2, and they had some chance, got some runners on base late in the 9th, had chances to, crack one over the fence and maybe even tie it up, but just couldn't quite get anything going. In the second game, Carson Sova had the start and was pretty successful on the mound overall. Went through 5 innings, only allowing 2 runs off of 5 hits and 4 walks, 3 strikeouts, so a pretty solid day for the freshman there. But ultimately, BG left 3 runners stranded on base in the first inning and just were not able to find a lot of offensive success in general. They got some runs later on, ended up losing 7-4, but hopefully they're able to pull out today's contest, as again they are tied 6-6. And something that really sticks out to me about this team, I know nobody in here is RB's Tyler Cavalitz and Chaz McNeil can't be here today. None of us here are the super baseball pros, but just the same, there's so much youth contributing on this team, and that's really what sticks out to me anytime I think about the team. I know there's some veteran presences, but I don't know, what do you make of it?
Yeah, I mean they had to find something that was going to make up for the loss of Nathan Archer and then all of these other players that they lost from last year, and we're seeing it this year. I mean, Brady Birchmeyer and his breakout that he's had this year has been pretty incredible. I know that's one of those players that we talked about that was going to have to step up. He had not a super great year last year, and he's really just moves on hitting 324 with an OPS over 1,000 this year, 38 RBIs already on the air for him. And then it's been Gunnar Antillion, who's come over as a transfer, but he's had a pretty good year playing starting shortstop for them. And then Braden Curlis, also, we had that feature that came out about him at Falcon Media last week. If you want to check that out, it's on our website there. He's had a great year as well.
I think, too, all the sophomores, a lot of them are sophomores that are contributing a lot. And honestly, too, Garrett Wright, catcher for Bowling Green, has just been absolutely outstanding all season long. And it's funny, too, because while his position is catcher, he's played, I want to say, 3-4 different positions for Kyle Halleck this season. He's been, moved around pretty much a lot of places. I know so far in this game against Miami, he's had 2 runs scored on 3 hits, 2 RBIs, and has a home run as well. So, again, he's just playing outstanding for Bowling Green.
He's been an absolute hitting machine. Not only that, in the first game of this series, first of the doubleheader on Friday, Garrett Wright got the Falcons on the board in the 4th inning when he hit a home run. I feel like every time he comes up to bat, it feels like there is a chance. He was also one of the hits for the Falcons, I believe, in the last inning of that same game that they did end up losing. But again, he's shown an ability to really show up when they're in those key situations and they need a spark or even to just stay alive. And it's not to say he's at all the same player. There's different skill sets, different players, but it feels like in a lot of ways he's filling a role, some things that we saw from Nathan Archer last year. And again, as just a sophomore, really impressive showing.
It definitely does indeed. And I think this is a big game for Bowling Green right now. They're playing right now. I mean, obviously they lost the series against Miami, but Miami is one of those teams that are in that tier 1 of the MAC. So getting a game at least and not getting swept by the Red Hawks is something very valuable and something that they can take with them momentum-wise going into their next series. I don't think getting swept by a team that you're competing with against for the regular season title, but also just competing with when you get into tournament time at home, getting swept is not a good feeling. So I think this is actually a really big game morale-wise for Bowling Green.
Yeah, and it's also worth noting they did not get swept in MAC play last season at all. Mm-hmm. They only lost 2 series, and they've now lost 2 series this season.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, Holden, to the biggest story that actually out of that first game was DJ Newman getting hurt again because, obviously last season had that injury towards the end of the year, and that was a big handicap for Bowling Green, what they could do. In tournament play especially, but he comes into this season still recovering from his injury. Is he going to pitch, is he not? He pitched a little bit at the start of the year and then how it kind of pulled him, and we didn't really see him for a little bit, so we thought we were just being cautious until Mac play. Then didn't really see him. But in the first game against Miami, he was on third base, and he was, making the run towards home, but the catcher kind of stood in the way, kind of blocked his path a little bit, dove for home plate. Obviously barreled into the catcher. His helmet kind of flew off. He was called out. So nothing. Then obviously, to a lot of Bowling Green fans, they think the ump missed the call there and thought he should have been called safe because the catcher just blocked his path to home. I remember Kyle Halleck not being too happy about that, but I remember Newman being a little bit shaken up after that. And to my knowledge, he is not playing this game either, and he did not play in the doubleheader as well, if I'm not mistaken. So that's, in my opinion, the biggest negative for this game is the health of DJ Newman, because when he's healthy, he's the best player on the team.
Yeah, I think it's something that we unfortunately saw as last season came to an end. Strong momentum from the Falcons all year. DJ Newman gets hurt, and next thing you know, the tournament quickly turns into, well, that was a fun regular season, and the tournament championship hopes kind of dashed, and you just have to hope realistically that DJ Newman's not too seriously hurt and is able to return and to continue to make an impact, because I don't think it's a secret to anybody who's watched a game of Falcons baseball how impactful he is. Worth noting now, the Falcons have finished the bottom of the 8th. No additional runs beyond what we said, so the score is tied at 6-all going into the top of the 8th. And even though we're still live playing right now and there's plenty more to dissect about it, I also do want to look ahead a little bit at the schedule, because I think it's really, really important for the Falcons to take this game that they're in. If you look at the current MAC standings, due to varying numbers of games played, it's currently Miami in first at 12-2 in conference, Kent State second at 10-2 conference, Ball State third at 9-2, Bowling Green fourth at 10-4, and so, I think it makes it, all the more imperative. I don't think we're really sweating. There's a significant drop off. You look after Bowling Green, Eastern Michigan's 8-6, and then Central's 5-7, Toledo's 6-9. It's a pretty stark contrast there.
I think there's a big, and I think Tyler Kavlis was telling me this the other day, and I think there's a big discretion with the tiers. It's kind of similar to women's basketball a little bit this year, with you could tell who are the elite teams, who are the middle of the pack teams, and who are the teams kind of the bottom. I think tier 1 in the MAC now is Miami, the top 4: Miami, Ball State, Kent State, and Bowling Green. I think those 4 are the ones that I think realistically are the best. The best teams in the MAC are also going to be the teams towards the end in the MAC tournament. And unfortunately for the Falcons, they've lost to Kent State at home again and lost a series to Miami. Hopefully they get a game here today, but then they play Ball State pretty soon coming up as well, and that's another humongous series because they're, again, one of the elite teams, and for a lot of people's mind, they're the best, arguably the best team in the MAC too. So they gotta get a win over one of these elite teams as well.
And it is kind of a little bit of a question mark, I guess, if they're going to be able to claw their way back. Again, Miami, Kent, Ball State all ahead of them now, and you really want to take the one today. I feel like you can't go from top of the conference tie to cool, now you're in fourth. I do think there's a lot of importance to that seeding when you look at 6 teams being in the tournament, and as you kind of talked about, there's a top shelf and then there's a decline, and I don't think that's really a stretch of the imagination to say. And the difference between a first seed and a 4 seed is the difference between getting a bye and then playing a really lower tier team, an Eastern or a Central, if it ended right now, if they were able to win, or just getting, that first round either way, as compared to, well, maybe you're matching up against Ball State or Kent State again, out of the gate. I don't think, I think it's really, really important, maybe more so than, some of the other brackets that we've seen. It just, when there's that many good teams, I think the seeding matters all the more.
The big thing I think we need to worry about is the health of DJ Newman, and if he's able to play next 2 weeks, because that's going to be the deal breaker. He does so much on both sides. Obviously he's mainly a hitter right now for them, but he's hitting .419 with over an 1100 OPS right now. He is the best hitter on this team, and he also has that pitching talent that he can provide at times. So for him to be out is going to be a big problem for them if they're going to want to compete in this top 4.
Yeah, I do think you make. Sorry, Lucas. Real quick. I do think you make a good point, because a good point, because when we've seen the Falcons healthy and available, they can play as well as anybody. And, we have seen that. And so you are right. I think I may have been a little hasty, only in that it doesn't necessarily matter who you're going up against if you are performing at your best, because we know, being seated at fourth does not mean that they are the fourth best team. I mean, I don't think it's a stretch to say when they're healthy, they're the best or tied for the best.
For sure.
So I do agree with what you're saying. I think, DJ Newman is going to be the key here.
Yeah, I was just going to agree with what Henry said and add on to his point is, Newman does so much on both sides, and he's really important hitting as well. But I think the team has done a good job as supporting him this year a little bit, especially at bat. I mentioned Gary Wright as well. He leads the team right now, 43 hits. Sam Seidel as well, 39 hits on the year. Brady Birchmeyer has been incredible as well. Those are players that have all been really good at the plate. So, I think they've done a good job supporting DJ. And I think last year, obviously Nathan Archer was an incredible offensive player for the team, but it almost felt like it was your Archer or nothing at times, where he was almost like the only player that can get you out of any situation.
When Newman is out, that's what it was like.
Right, exactly. So it's a little bit more shared. It's more evenly spread this year. Which I think is really beneficial for the team, especially in the long run, especially when you get tournament play where it matters the most. But again, like Henry said, you need DJ if you're going to win the MAC tournament, which I know we're getting really ahead of ourselves, thinking all the way to the MAC tournament. But if you want to compete for the MAC championship and be a top elite team, you need your best player healthy, and their best player healthy is DJ Newman.
I mean, I think saying that the team had no expectations really going into last year, and then they won the regular season championship, and then they fell in the MAC tournament. So I think the expectations of this team is that they're able to go deep in the MAC tournament. So I think anything short of that is underachieving. And I think kind of the reaction I've seen from Halleck a lot of the time, especially on Friday and then in the Kent State series when they had all that trouble, obviously he wants to win every single one of these games, and he knows that the team can win every single one of these games. So, series like this are a big deal. And when you're underperforming, they underperformed offensively in this series. 4 runs in game 2, only 2 in game 1 after, Miami is the best offensive team in the MAC, but they're one of the worst in terms of pitching. I think they're 9th or 8th in team ERA. And I think a lot of people expected Bowling Green to come into this home series and whack and hit, maybe go over 10 runs in one of these games, but not a lot of offensive production. That they have put up 6 in this game, but that's troubling for me at least.
Yeah,
I do. Oh, go ahead.
I think the weather also was a huge factor as to why the offense really hasn't been too good this weekend. And going back to Newman and him being hurt right now, the good news with the Falcons and how they've kind of set up their schedule is, they don't have another MAC game until Friday. They play Youngstown State on Wednesday, so they have that ability to rest him if he's healthy enough to play against Youngstown State and kind of give him those extra days. So then once you play Western Michigan on Friday, April the 11th, you can kind of put him back in the lineup.
Yeah. And correct me if I'm wrong, guys. I'm not a baseball expert by any stretch of the imagination, especially with covering the team. That's Chaz and Tyler. But for Youngstown State, do you play any of your starters, especially when you're in the heat of MAC play? Don't you just try to get up to freshmen or some of the kind of players that haven't seen game time as much this season and just see what you got and kind of get them that game time experience they have, especially since it's just Youngstown State and it really doesn't mean anything?
I think you tap into your depth. I don't think that any of the, top options really should get much consideration at all.
And also, I'm saying that
it's not
too.
in a series. It's just one game, and it's not conference.
I would say, if a player is hitting well right now and on a hot streak, you do not bench them because that could be the very thing that kills the hot streak. And
kills the momentum. Yeah,
baseball is very momentum based and individual based in a sense. So I'd say for maybe a player that's not doing the best as of late, maybe yes, bench them, but definitely not a player that's been playing exceptionally well, because you don't want to kill that.
Right. And I say that too because they have Western Michigan coming up, and while Western Michigan is not good this year as they were last year because they've lost pretty much a lot of their top-end talent last year, that's a team that handed Bowling Green a loss in the MAC tournament as well, and that's a team they really want to get a little bit of revenge back this year, regardless of how well Western Michigan is doing or whatnot.
Yeah, I think everything there is pretty dead on, and I think as they stand right now, they're sitting in the top of the 8th. There's only one out for Miami, but I think they just need to keep competing. like I said earlier, you've got different expectations depending on where different teams were. And I think as much as you want to look forward, you always have to look back. I mean, I think you can almost always, or at least recently, you can contextualize a team a lot with, what happened last year, what they were able to do, and who's still here. And, again, we can talk all day about replacing Nathan Archer, but at the end of the day, not only do you have guys getting a lot better. You've got Garrett Wright, Brady Birchmeyer, peaking and playing, as well and better than they ever have. But specifically on the note of DJ Newman, you've got more guys picking up his slack on both ends. In particular, Connor Penrod has had a much better season thus far this year than a lot of what we saw anything last year. And that's an area that you need some slack for when DJ Newman's not able to go. And again, I think there's more. You've got kind of more star sluggers, I guess would be just a simpler way to say it as well. Again, Garrett Wright and Brady Birchmeyer have both, are always the two that come to mind, have been hitting really, really well. And I think there's just a lot of areas where they're able to more compensate for a weakness that kind of knocked them down a few pegs and caused them kind of flame out of the tournament last year. And I think that's going to, because of that, I think it's completely reasonable to place those expectations that Henry was talking about. Again, if you really, really lean on one guy and you don't have a ton of depth behind him, then we made the tournament, we won the regular season, fine. But I think we know, and I think they certainly know, especially as you said with, the animatedness of Halleck of late in some losses. The expectation is still, over the moon, and I don't think that should change until the season's, in the rear view, frankly.
Yeah, on Friday there was an incident where Halleck went all the way out to the pitcher's mound to talk to the umpire, and I remember Tyler Cavillette saying it at least 3 or 4 times, but he said that is something you never, ever, ever, ever see Halleck do.
Yeah, they're passionate and they know that this team can do it, right? Like all of the hitters that are hitting over 300 or near it, Newman, Wright, Seidel, Birchmeyer, Gannon, Tackett, Santillan, Caden Bates, Zach Horkey. You could keep going with all these hitters that are having good seasons. And what's more important, you mentioned, Holden, what's more important than having that one star player on a baseball team? You want that depth over that star player on any given day.
It's like my Cincinnati Reds for the past decade when they just had Joey Votto and there was no one batting in front of him or behind him, and we're 68 and had 100 losses every year. Sorry, I had to go on a sidebar there.
You just beat Milwaukee though, so.
Hooray!
It's gonna be Ellie De La Cruz for the next 15 years.
Don't say this.
Don't let him get too attached. Another update now, sitting with 2 outs in the top of the 8th, still another batter struck out swinging for the Red Hawks. So Falcons, as they love to do, making it close and taking a stab at taking the lead in the 8th here. Looking ahead for their schedule, they've got Youngstown on Wednesday, as we talked about, and the Western Michigan series after that. You've got a midweek with Purdue-Fort Wayne, and then a weekend against Ball State. Midweek against Michigan, at Michigan and Ann Arbor. That should be an interesting one. Then you've got Eastern Michigan, Toledo again, Butler, Notre Dame, and then you round out the season with another against Toledo and one more against a series against NIU, which is a whole mouthful of games. But looking ahead to that schedule, what do you think, where do you put the most importance? Because the way I see it, save for, and I guess maybe the easy answer would be Ball State. So I'm going to say, aside from Ball State.
Dang it.
Yeah.
Which of those series is most important to you? Because otherwise, they've played, this contender tier that we've established, they've played them. They're getting done with Miami today. Ball State's the only other one on the schedule ahead. We know, where do you point to as a big series that'll kind of define the rest of it?
I would go with the Toledo series, the one game at Fifth Third. The Fifth Third Field game against Toledo in that series. That's May 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. One, because it's a rivalry and anything can happen, but 2, also Toledo. I don't know where Toledo's going to be, especially in the MAC standings at that point. They're not exactly a world beater team. They're in the middle of the pack, but that could be a really big series for them if they want to get one of those last spots in the MAC tournament. So for me, that would be a huge series. I'm
going to say the Western Michigan series because, again, you kind of need to right the ship of losing at least 2 out of 3 to Miami this weekend. And right after that, you have a series against Ball State, which, as Holden, you mentioned, is very, very important. So if you're able to win 2 of 3 against Western Michigan or sweep them, I think that will create enough positive momentum for you to go into the Ball State series being happy and feeling good at that moment.
I would just go for any of these last 7 games, the 4 games against Toledo and the 3 against NIU, because we'll see where this team is at after Ball State, whether MAC tournament or MAC regular season title is maybe something they're really going to be shooting for. But otherwise, I think just getting into the tournament as a high seed is going to be important. And we've seen this team has really taken care of business against these teams that are lower in the MAC. OU second to last, they swept them. Akron lower in the standings, they swept them as well. Central, they swept them as well. All of those on the road. So I think they've played well against teams in the lower half of the MAC, and those are the games that they really just are going to need to win, and games that I think they will win later on in the season.
I really like Lucas's answer just because I feel like all of our teams do a really, really good job of embracing the rivalry, how close Toledo is and just the familiarity of those opponents. And I think there's just so much positive momentum that can come out of sticking it to your rival.
The game at Fifth Third.
Not to mention the game at Fifth Third Field is electric.
Yeah, Fifth Third. I mean, come on, that's pretty cool.
Yeah,
awesome environment though. Something that's a slight sidebar, but on the same note, also the separate Toledo game. I'll fully expose my ignorance here. Why do they have the series and then a separate one, like a one-off? That's just odd scheduling to me.
Because it's at Toledo. It's not even
right. So it's 4 games in Toledo. Also, there's not a home.
I believe
in that one, which makes sense.
I believe one of the 4 is not a conference game. Is how it's explained to me.
Fifth Third is a conference game.
Yeah, one of the 4 is not a conference game. That's how it was explained to me. So that's why you have the weird
that
separated
makes sense.
game.
It's the one at Fifth Third for sure.
The start of the weekend.
BG had that. The softball team had that where they played Akron at the Spartanburg Classic in South Carolina, but it didn't count as a conference game.
It is the first 3-game series. So the Fifth Third game and the other 2 are MAC games. That one random game on May 13th against Toledo is a non-conference game, which is just really weird.
What?
Yeah, at least according to the schedule, I'll have the little MAC icon.
Yep. Oh yeah. And it's kind of weird that it's at them again too. I don't think it's the end of the world.
Yeah, no home games for BG. Not even nothing at Stellar, which is find that kind of odd, but whatever.
Yeah, at the end of the day, you take care of business as well you can. Toledo's certainly a tier below the top shelf we've talked about by all accounts, but even so, it's just, I don't know, that one just sticks out to me. It's kind of odd, but we're gonna periodically touch base on baseball as it keeps going, as the Falcons have gotten out of the top of the 8th inning with no runs given up, so they now go into the bottom of the 8th, still tied 6-6. TJ Tackett's to bat first, bringing up the top of the order again, and hopefully putting the Falcons in position to steal one of this weekend series. So we'll touch on that a little more as we keep going. But now we are going to move on from baseball and talk a little bit about track and field. The track and field team was at the Spartan Invitational in East Lansing, hosted by Michigan State, and they had 4 winners in different events, which kind of feels like almost a pedestrian day, which is just, to me, a testament to how talented and how strong the performance has been across the board, especially from the distancers and a couple of the throwers. The only track win itself was Alexis Parchman's win in the 100-meter dash. It's definitely a tough event there. Another freshman was right behind her, only by 0.11 seconds, in second place. The seeded 800 meters had Rachel Hoover and Reese Riemann, both freshmen, placing second and third. Freshmen placing second and third with times of 2:10 and 2:11. Kylie Cubison PR'd in the 1500 meters, getting a second place, which is no school record, but a 4:25.74 in the 1500 meters is very, very, very fast, to put it bluntly. One other notable race on the track, Madison Foster, a junior, ran in 3,000-meter steeplechase for the first time in her career. She placed 4th, but it was also interesting because it was kind of a homecoming for her as she transferred to BGSU for cross country and track this past year from Michigan State. So a fun return to East Lansing for her. Only one relay happened on the day. The quartet got second place in the 4x1, running 46.72 seconds, a really strong time for them as well. The other 3 victories for the Falcons in the meet took place in field events. Trista Fintel won the shot put with a 14.43 meter throw, which is kind of par for the course for her. She's been really just dominant in MAC competition and otherwise. And the other field event victories came for Bianca Staples in the long jump with a 5.58 meter jump, which is a PR for her, and the triple jump, jumping 11.6 meters. So really impressive showing for Bianca Staples there, getting a double victory in the field events, which I think are a lot more taxing than is, kind of realized because you don't see them running. For context, for those not good with the metric system, 5.58 meters is 18.3 feet. So really makes that long jump kind of come to life a little bit, doesn't it?
You ran track and field and cross country, right, Holden? Could you do that?
No, I could not jump 18. I jumped about 13, I would say, the last time I long jumped in middle school.
That's insane.
That's still
insane.
pretty good.
It's all right.
Do they do steeplechase in college?
They do, yeah.
Thing where you jump in the water?
Yeah, Madison Foster competed in the 3,000 meter steeplechase. She got 4th, I think I said. Which, yeah, I never personally ran in that. We didn't have that at any of the meets that my high school went to, but I do have to say, I think that's as hard as an event as you can run.
That's what I was going to say.
I feel that way about the steeplechase and the longer hurdling events.
Yeah.
Because just, I think the longer you run, the harder it is physically and mentally. Generally, but on top of that, you add in that you have to do a completely unnatural motion to get over an obstacle. That's nuts.
Yeah. So steeplechase is like you hurdle over a hurdle into like a pool of water. Right?
Yeah, I think
like
generally
lower?
you try to like clear to the kind of upward slope of the water. You don't really want to land in the pool and splash. Typically if you see that, it's kind of bad news bears. But but ultimately, it's very taxing. And I think with that and hurdling, it really flies under the radar how technical that is. Because, not literally anybody, but, an average person, an average athlete can get over an obstacle in their way, while running, step on it, hop over it, whatever. Yeah. But to do it in stride without, breaking or, landing hard and hurting your foot, losing too much momentum, losing focus even, just, that's one of those ones that I think really displays the mental toughness of the athletes competing in it. We are now at the top of the hour here, so we are going to take a quick step away for station identification, and we've got a lot to discuss in the second half here about the Ziggies, which we will have our own Lucas Kleinmeyer take you into further detail about when we come back from this break. Don't go anywhere. We are going to start off with the second half here, talking about the Ziggies on the Zig Zone on WBGU 88.1 FM.
You are listening to WBGU 88.1 FM, home of the Falcon Media Sports Network.
Hey.
Hey BG Falcon fans, you're here with Paige Kohler on the women's basketball team. These are my Falcon 4 favorite things about basketball. First off, I love competing. I love being able to win, and I love the winning feeling. Second, I love that it's a team sport. I love being out there with 4 other people on the court. Third, all the traveling that we get to do. I've been to so many new places because of basketball. And lastly, I love making new friends and just playing the sport I love with my best friends.
BGSU Women's Golf returns to BG for the Dolores Black Falcon Invitational at Stone Ridge Golf Club on Saturday, April 5th and Sunday, April 6th. Falcon Media Sports Network's Kevin Hutchinson will have a recap on bgfalconmedia.com.
Welcome back into WBGU 88.1 FM, where you're listening to the second hour of the Zig Zone. Once again, I'm Holden Ruck from Falcon Media Sports Network, and I'm still joined by Henry Costco, Lucas Kleinmeyer, and Caden Knapp. In the second hour here, we're going to talk a little bit, for the first time we've really gotten to get into it on this show, about the Ziggies, and I'm going to go ahead and throw it to Lucas. Lucas is our sports director for Falcon Media and Falcon Media Sports Network. And Lucas, why don't you just, tell our listeners a little bit about what's going on.
Please.
Please. Oh, okay. I will. Yeah. So the Ziggies is the end of the year BJSU Athletics Award event that they do every year. That's where they give their athletes the top awards for their performances throughout the entire academic calendar school year. Falcon Media Sports Network and BG Falcon Media will be playing a big hand and help covering the event this year. So Falcon Media Sports Network will have a lot in terms of doing the pre-coverage. So we are responsible for a lot of like social media videos and these graphics and these also videos like of the nominees for each awards, and just obviously we're doing a segment right now on the Zig Zone, so that's one thing we're doing as well too, and just trying to bring hype and coverage to the event of the award show. We'll be also covering the event as it's happening live, so we'll be doing interviews with some of the award winners, so social media clips as well. So social media updates, we'll have photo galleries, written, and then cinematic video recaps, and all that fun stuff. So that's something to look out for on the website, bgfalconmedia.com. But you can find all this at theziggies.com. So go to theziggies.com. It's linked with BG Falcon Media. That is where all of the content, pre, during, and post for the Ziggies that you'll see. You'll see a lot of the hashtag the Ziggies in a lot of our content, which means those are posts promoting the award show. And then obviously I mentioned it too, but we're covering the event, so a lot of our videos, cinematic recap videos, post-award interviews will be coming out the next day of the event or sometime around there. This is the second year we are doing this with BGSU Athletics. Obviously, I mentioned our partnership with BGSU Athletics with traveling and all that, and they've been such a great partner with Falcon Media and Falcon Media Sports Network. So this is the second year we're doing it, and this is a year we're adding more to it again. I mentioned a lot of our pre-hype coverage we're doing with it, which is a big difference this year compared to last year. Holden, obviously, we're doing a segment on it right now in the Zig Zone. There's also some special guests we want to get on in the future. The MCs for the event is BGSU Football's Finn Hogan and BGSU Women's Soccer's Jaden Fergerio. Try to get them on an episode of the Zig Zone to talk about the event too, so that should be a whole lot of fun as well next week. And then just try. This award show, it's supposed to be fun, right? It's the end of the year awards to celebrate all of our athletes. It's gonna be a lot of fun. We have a big helping hand in the pre, during, and post event. We'll have a big helping hand in the male athlete of the year, female athlete of the year, the comeback performance of the year, the moment of the year, male freshman of the year, and female freshman of the year as well. So those are kind of the 6 awards that we're going to help push a lot on our social platforms on the cover as well. We're going to have the privilege of presenting a couple awards at the Ziggies as well, and also kind of highlighting the partnership, as I mentioned, with BGS Select. So also highlighting Falcon Media Sports Network and all that we've done this past year. So a lot of that is with broadcasts we've done, games covered, all those fun numbers that we like to share at the end of the year and all that stuff. So it's kind of a big, I think of it like a big end of the year celebration. Like, have you ever seen those kids movies? Every kids movie ends like a giant dance celebration for some reason. It's kind of like a big end of the year celebration where you kind of highlight all the athletes, highlight all the awards, and I'm really looking forward to it. We got a big crew working on a lot of stuff pre-event. And obviously during the event as well. So this week you'll see a lot of those social media pieces, like I mentioned, of promoting those awards that I mentioned. My man over here, Henry Costco and Nick Winholtz, are working on a lot of these videos for each award, as well as some of those highlights of each athlete in action during this past year. We'll have some graphics as well promoting the event as well. And obviously, we're doing some right now in the Zig Zone, and we have a lot of spots on there as well. So it's a big event, second year we're doing it in a row, and I'm very excited.
Yeah, I think it's really you can't overstate just how cool of an event it is, not only from our perspective. Obviously, we love to be involved in these kinds of things to support and platform athletes in any way possible, but especially for the athletes. It's something they've been, as a concept, doing for a while, and just to, really acknowledge and kind of put a more professional framing of the college athletics environment, specifically here at BG, I think is really special, and I think it's super exciting that we are able to contribute in the ways that we are able to offer our time.
Yeah, for sure. Indeed. You guys want to hear the nominees for the 6 of the awards?
Oh, absolutely.
Let's do it.
Sure.
Yep. So the male athlete of the year is Nathan Archer, former BGSU baseball player, Kyle Cusimano from men's soccer, and Harold Fannin Jr. I think those are 3 all deservedly nominees, and Very proud of all those athletes.
One interjection I will make, just for the clarification as well, is that the Ziggy Awards span the previous calendar year. So Nathan Archer, being a former BGSU athlete, entails his performances during the last baseball season, as he's obviously not currently with the team.
Yep. And female athlete of the year is Kylie Cubbinson from cross country, track and field, Lauren Hovey from volleyball, and Amy Velasco for women's basketball. All three individual female athletes too that also had stellar seasons as well.
That's a stacked category.
That is pretty
Yeah.
stacked. Comeback performance of the year, baseball's win against Eastern Michigan. Christian Stover's performance this year for hockey, and then obviously Lexi Fleming coming back for her second major knee injury for BGSU basketball.
Some really big impacts there, returning to contribute to their teams. And yeah, again, these categories are all feel really up in the air, to be honest.
Indeed. And then moment of the year, baseball's win on May the 3rd, which I believe clinched their share in the MAC championship, which is a big story about how the program, at one point was cut and then came back. That was a big moment for them last year. Harold Fan Jr.'s, I forget how many records he broke this year.
Too many to count.
Too many to count. He's up for Moment of the Year as well, along with Male Athlete of the Year. Then Indoor Track and Field win the MAC this year is also up for Moment of the Year as well. Another big stat category. There's been a lot of great moments in athletics this year, and it's hard to pick.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Just three. Male Freshman of the Year, Raiko Bodurov from men's soccer, Maxwell Martin from BGSU hockey, and Garrett Wright from BGSU baseball. Another three freshmen, too, that had outstanding seasons as well. Yeah.
And those guys in particular, I really like that category because it's not just three guys who were pretty good for freshmen. I mean, we saw those three throughout their freshman seasons, impact, be big contributors on the team, and I think that's really significant.
Yeah. And then Female Freshman of the Year, Reese Riemann, Janaea Donahue, and Sammy Dolis from women's golf are all the nominees for Freshman of the Year. So all three were outstanding performers as well. So, yeah. There's some nominees. And again, you can look at all of our content for social media, graphics, and highlight videos throughout this week and also next week, too, because I know people are going to forget the nominees as well. But that's our job, again, to bring hype to the event so you have a more visual grasp of who the nominees are. And then eventually on April 23rd for the Ziggies, we'll find out the winners for each award as well. So that should be a whole lot of fun.
As Lucas said there, I will once again restate there's a ton of coverage happening, a lot going on. bgfalconmedia.com, your best home to keep up with things going on, as well as our platforms for BG Falcon Media and at BG_FMSN on Twitter and X. You can also find those platforms on Instagram and Facebook as well. And yeah, there's going to be a lot to keep up with, and it's only going to ramp up as we get closer to the Ziggies on that date of April 23rd, just 17 days from today. So it's coming up very, very quickly, and
we're all going to be stressed
exciting.
out. It's going to be great.
I do want to tap into an update for baseball, as we've certainly got some time, and it's really close now. The bottom of the ninth is already here. Miami was unable to get any more runs over those last two innings, and so now the score still sits at 6-6. 0 outs for the Falcons. The chance to walk off in the ninth inning here, so we will definitely keep an eye on that as we continue. And now that we've talked about the Ziggies a little bit, I've got to toss up the discussion question that normally comes around the top of the hour, but I delayed it a little bit so we could talk about the Ziggies, as that's just, again, so important to the university, to us as an organization, and certainly to athletics as well. But the question that I threw you guys over the break is, I want you to, tell me your opinion, your thoughts, feelings on what a really standout championship in a sport was to you that wasn't earned by one of your teams that you root for, whether that mean a beat here or whether it mean a professional team that you grew up rooting for, your dad's cousin's brother's dog's alma mater, whatever that may be. I want to know what's one that just sticks out to you, and it doesn't have to be for any particular reason. I don't know if anyone comes to mind. If you don't, I can give you one. But Caden looks like he has something to queue up. So what do you got for me?
I think everyone in this room knows that I'm a huge basketball person. So I'm
no idea.
Yeah, there you go. The first thing that came to my mind was Virginia winning the national championship in the 2018-2019 season. If you remember, let's rewind to the year before. They were the number 1 overall seed, and they were playing a 16 seed by the name of UMBC. Came into that game, UMBC upset them, winning by over 20 points, and the biggest upset in college basketball history up to this point. And, I mean, as a 1 seed losing to a 16 seed, that's rock bottom. And then you come in the next year and everyone's like, oh, Virginia's going to lose again. And they just ran through the tournament all the way to the championship game and won. So that's why I picked them, because just that turnaround, I don't think we've ever seen that before at that level.
Yeah, it's a really, really interesting pick. That's something I wouldn't have thought of. It's hard to frame it like being an underdog kind of thing, because it's not, when you're playing as a 1 seed. But at the same time, I think the expectations that are entailed by being a 1 seed and being in that position, and then the, frankly, embarrassment and frustration that has to come out of losing to a 16 seed. I mean, they're called Cinderellas for a reason. The teams you don't expect to, you just don't see it.
And on top of that, it was the bottom 16 seed, like the very last team to get into the tournament, and they still found a way to beat Virginia.
That was an all-time upset for sure.
Yeah.
But that's a really, really strong pick. Lucas, Henry, we have any ideas over here, gentlemen?
You want me to go, or you want to go?
You can go first.
Okay. I don't know. I really don't, because I'll be honest. I'm that self-centered where I don't like anyone else winning championships. It's not my team. I will say I really, since Cincinnati, people don't know I'm from the Cincinnati area. We do not have a pro basketball team, so the Cavs winning the 2016 NBA Finals was really, really cool. Obviously, for that team and for that city too, that was dying to get an NBA championship, and obviously LeBron James fulfilling his promise to bring a championship. I just remember, how old was I at that time? I had to be barely a teenager. I remember everybody in my family was watching it, and we're not from Cleveland, we're not really basketball fans, so like, why are you watching this? Because I had no idea how high the stakes were, how big that was, and the fact that they came back from 3-1 down. I had no idea until I learned more about it and I rewatched. I mean, his block at the end of the game is like one of the best plays in NBA history. Obviously, the shot that Kyrie Irving made. That's awesome. I think it's awesome. It was good for that city. It's one of the best NBA championships in recent memory. It might be one of the best of all time. So I'm going to make the argument that might be the best. But yeah, that was really cool. And I think that's one of the most legendary NBA finals moments of all time. And that's something that when people say the finals, I think of, because also too, the Cavs and Warriors just had that 4-year stretch where they just met in the finals every year. So that was pretty legendary as well. And, it's kind of like old generations, Lakers, Celtics, and it's kind of like our generation. And we got to see Cavs, Warriors with LeBron versus Steph and all that. So that was probably mine. I think that was pretty cool. I remember that vividly. That was pretty fun.
And I would maybe like the 2022 World Cup. I think Argentina.
That was such a good one. I'm so mad at Six.
That's a great choice.
I have a very specific, because when I was watching that game, I was working at a Christmas tree lot around that time, and
Costco lore.
I remember I sat there watching that with my an intern who was from Indonesia, and I was sitting around the fire pit behind the garden center watching that game on our phones. And it was pretty awesome.
Dude,
it was pretty awesome.
I want to change my answer. That is the best soccer game I've ever seen. I mean, one Messi and Mbappe, but France and Argentina, that game was insane, dude. That's such a good pick. Good job.
It was wild.
I don't know that I'm really answering this prompt that I came up with in good faith, because I don't know that this is my definitive answer, but one championship that will always linger to me, I have a really, really close friend. Our high school mascot was the Eagles, and so when he was a youngin' and he saw the same logo that we ripped off and changed the colors of on TV, he naturally gravitated towards it. And so my buddy from Pemberville, Ohio, is a Philadelphia Eagles fan to this day, and watching Nick Foles and the Philadelphia Eagles pull trick plays out of their pocket and upset the New England Patriots is a championship game that I will never forget.
That was a crazy game.
That was just such a weird game, because everyone knows Bill Belichick for his defensive teams, and it was 41-33 or something like that.
There wasn't a single punt in that game as well.
And Nick Foles being Tom Brady, who's arguably the GOAT in the Super Bowl, is that's crazy. That's a good one. That's a really good one. That was Philadelphia's first Super Bowl, right?
It was
Philadelphia's
first franchise Super Bowl, yeah.
That one's not talked about enough. As far as 2010 Super Bowls, that's up there for sure.
No, I think it kind of wore off a little bit, because we had, there's a Super Bowl every year, and at the end of the day, you're going to, move on to the next. But, that one lingers to me as one of the most standout ones. We're getting some signals of despair from Falcon Radio next door as the Bowling Green and Miami game has gone into the top of the 10th, as the Falcons were pretty quickly struck out on 3 in the bottom of the 9th.
Wow,
so the Red Hawks now starting off in extra innings shortly with the chance to put it away themselves. He's very hungry and would like food, he says from Falcon Radio. That's exactly what he said verbatim. No changed words there.
Appreciate Reese Patricus.
Appreciate Reese Patricus keeping us on the air for baseball. Absolutely. We'll, again, try to stay on top of that one as the Red Hawks actually have the first out already. They've won fly ball out for the Falcons there, so hopefully able to get 2 more and try to put this one away in these extra innings now. But backtracking to what I was saying before our brief aside about the baseball game, that Eagles one, the context of a backup quarterback taking over from a quarterback who had an MVP level season, because realistically, that's what Carson Wentz did during that year.
Good old Carson Wentz.
Good old Carson Wentz. Really, really just stands out to me. And especially because that wasn't just the end of the Patriots dynasty. They beat the Rams, I believe, the next year.
Yep, they did.
It was literally the year after. They got right back there. And, it's not like Dallas beating down on the Buccaneers in Tom Brady's last ever, playoff game. It's like, okay, the end of the era, blah, 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 fine, Yeah. But, that's still, That's still a quarterback who won 2 more rings of franchise that won literally next year. I don't know that it gets...
I don't know if we have room for this, but I want to hear how many rings you think Mahomes is going to get comparatively to Brady. Because how many Super Bowls he's going to make.
Well...
Because how many Super Bowls is he at already? Is he at 4?
3.
He's at 3.
He's at 3.
Yeah.
2 against the 49ers.
He's going to finish.
No, he's at 4.
He's
at 4.
Is he at 4?
Not wins, but like appearances.
Oh, yeah, he's at 4
we're talking about
appearances.
appearances. I thought you were talking about
rings.
wins.
Yeah, 3 wins, 4 appearances.
No, he has 2 losses.
2 losses.
Yeah, because he lost to Brady.
He
so
lost
he's
to
2 and 2.
Brady, and he lost.
He's
3. He's been to 5.
He's been in 5.
Yeah, 3 and 2.
Yeah, that's
3 and 2. Yeah.
3-time Super Bowl champion.
I remember
3-time Super Bowl MVP, 5 appearances.
I remember being so hyped for the Super Bowl between Tampa and Kansas City. Brady versus Mahomes, just for Kansas City's offensive line to be injured, Mahomes to get sacked 5 bajillion times, and that game did not live up to.
That was like the passing of the guard, though. That was like Brady, his final passing of the torch to the next GOAT.
I mean,
Mahomes.
For me personally, unless Mahomes wins 8 Super Bowls, Brady will always be the GOAT because he can say, I beat you, Patrick Mahomes, in the Super Bowl, which is
I completely
trumps
agree.
everything.
Completely agree.
Yeah, that's fair.
And also longevity, too.
Yes.
I don't know if Mahomes will play till he's 45. He's going to play close to there, but, it's longevity, too.
I would agree with that.
Yeah, and I think you can't just, when somebody does something first or gets a head-to-head win, you have to go beyond just the numbers. I think he's well on his way. I don't think that he's done winning Super Bowls, even though I might like to see some other teams win once in a while here. Was quite happy to see the Eagles win, ironically, just because it was a nice change of pace. But even so, I think we're still a little bit hasty on the conversation, only because he hasn't passed Terry Bradshaw and Joe Montana. I'm not arguing Terry Bradshaw is top 3 even,
that's fair.
But he's at 3 right now. I think to pass Brady, I think he needs to. If he ties him, I think he might still need to get some of his records.
Yeah,
and I think with the way the
Yeah,
pace has adjusted the passing offenses of modern day, I think he will at that rate. But I don't think it's that cut and dry. And if he doesn't get his records, I think he needs more rings, or he's not unseating him.
Yeah,
frankly,
it's going to be up to if the front office can still. Because the thing with the Patriots is they had 3 different eras of players, whereas you thought, okay, they're gonna fall off this year, that they kept coming back, and they had some crazy rosters. Even in 2017, their rosters were pretty insane. Comparatively.
Back in 2014, they were thinking about disbanding the Patriots team. Their upper management was, and Lucas, you're gonna love me for saying this, but Tom Brady actually credits the Cincinnati Bengals in that beatdown in Week 1 for restarting the dynasty.
Yeah. Well, I will say we're the only hope against the Chiefs because the Bills and Ravens have had gazillion opportunities to win, and they just keep losing.
How'd that Burrowhead thing go, though?
That was so dumb. That was so stupid. But yeah, we'll be back hopefully, maybe one day, eventually. Maybe not. I don't know. We'll find out.
Tapping into baseball again, the Red Hawks have 2 outs now, 2 strikes. With a single runner on first right now. So getting dangerously close to handing the Falcons a potential walk-off situation here in the bottom of the 10th if they're able to grind it out. Staying kind of with the football conversation because, it's out of season, but it always comes to mind. And we've been talking about the NFL. I have a question that we haven't talked about. We've been so focused on one side of our coaching change being the exciting hire. What kind of impact do you think Scott Loeffler is going to have in Philadelphia?
Yeah, I don't know.
That was kind of out of nowhere.
Yeah.
But you know
I'm
what?
thinking football. I'm thinking blue and green. You gotta put them together a little bit.
To be honest, man, I don't really know because you think too, like, he's going to a really good franchise, a team that just won the Super Bowl, but also like Jalen Hurts is a now seasoned quarterback, and he's now like they know like what he's good at, what makes him tick, how he should function. So it's so different for what he was doing in college. He's going in with a pro one and someone who's as close as a finished product as you can get. I mean, yeah, obviously they're always going to work on things, and there's always things you can get better at. But like, the guy just won a Super Bowl, right? He's Super Bowl MVP, right? So like, what are you going to really change a whole lot from him? I think more so too is like finding stuff to add to Jalen Hurts, but also I forget who's in, and Dorian Thompson-Robinson's in their quarterback room now as well. I forget.
Is Kenny Pickett still there?
Kenny Pickett's a Brown now, I think.
Brown,
he's
okay.
a Brown. That was the trade.
Oh yeah.
So obviously he'll work with DTR, but I really don't know. I really do not know because one, it's his first year, and also two, I don't know. He's got to grow that relationship with Jalen and all that quarterback room, and it'd be interesting. But that is the one thing that Loeffler, that's his expertise, is quarterback, is offensive play. That's his bread and butter. So
he coached Brady, I'm pretty sure too, when he was at Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
He did.
Yeah, he did. So like, he's an offensive coach. Like that's his thing. So I'm excited for him. I'm excited to see what he does, and I really don't have a real answer for you expert wise because again I don't know what else you could do to Jalen Hurts because I think, in my opinion, anyways, what we've seen Jalen Hurts is Jalen Hurts. Like what we see is what we get. Like he's a really good quarterback, but what he's good at is what he's good at. What he's not good at is what he's not good at. I don't think there's anything you can really add for him. He's not a young guy. Like I think he's now well established.
Yeah, something that's interesting. If you look back, trace the lines of Scott Loeffler's career. For the most part, he hasn't really worked with a dominant team. Michigan was definitely competitive when he was around as a student assistant, graduate assistant, 96, 97, 98, 99. Then you go to Central Michigan after that, back to Michigan from 2002 to 2007 as a quarterbacks coach, but, not the strongest stretch of Michigan football there. Then you go to Detroit Lions in 2008, and I'm not going to speak more on that because I think
I was going to say that, like, this is his first stint in the NFL since that year where he was the quarterback coach of the 0-16 Detroit Lions.
But my question to you, or maybe not even my question, but just something I think that should be considered is Scott Loeffler's never really stepped into a situation where things are, already kind of taken care of. Like, they're good. You know what I mean? They just won the Super Bowl. They're already, set up well. They've got a, verifiably good front office, good quarterback, good players all around the roster, good ownership. I mean, I'm really, really interested. I think the Eagles, are always exciting with guys like Jalen Hurts, the receiving core they have, God knows, Saquon Barkley. But I'm really interested from the BG fan perspective to see the kind of impact that he can have on Jalen Hurts' game, just because, number one, he's already a very developed and unique player. There's not a lot of players who have the skill set and play like Jalen Hurts does. And on top of that, I think it's by far, the most toys he's had to, work with, basically, to be.
I'm impressed with him being able to get that job, just for one thing, because getting a quarterback's coach job on one of the best franchises in the NFL is like a pretty big deal, because that can lead, like, if he has a good solid couple of years there, that can lead to something big. That can lead to like a potential offensive coordinator job, something like that in the NFL if things go right. So
yeah,
just big up to him.
That was one that I talked about, at least with some people. In conversations about, when he accepted the job initially and left, and, heard some chatter about how it kind of seemed like an odd move, you're going to go from one of the D1 coaches to a positional coach. It's like, okay, but there's only 32 of them. Yeah. And it's the top league. Right. And I mean, you have to build your upward trajectory from somewhere. I think, like, I completely understand, I think the move makes sense from a career standpoint if he wants to keep, moving up, if he wants, a career in the pros. I don't think a D1 college coaching job is shabby at all, but I think, moving up to potentially building yourself not only an upward trajectory of coaching positions in the NFL, but, maybe a legacy of coaching.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it makes a lot of sense from his standpoint.
Yeah. I got to say, too, I mean, respect to Eddie George, who's, how long has he been here now? A month, probably? A little over a month. And he has done so much media already. He threw the first pitch at the Toledo Mud Hens game. He's hopped on a lot of podcasts and done a lot of media already. Like, I mean, he has done already a whole lot in terms of like getting people hyped for the next season. And he's only been here for just a month. And, he had to get his whole staff in. He had to make a whole bunch of staff changes. And he had pro day. And then they have some spring practices as well. So he's trying to get to know his own team and his own guys and, see what makes them tick and who he likes, who he doesn't like, and just formulate his plan for next year while doing all that stuff. So, I mean, he's been working really hard since he's been here for Bowling Green. So respect to Eddie George and all that he's been doing so far with the community, because I really think this hire could be a home run hire with just his big name, his celebrity status he had, but also too, like, if he brings wins to Bowling Green football and obviously get us that a bowl win, which is what we've been craving for, and then also eventually a MAC championship win, which is the goal.
I mean, it's the big name, but it's also like he's earned it. His resume is solid. He brought Tennessee State their first conference championship in, was it 26 years, 25 years?
It was somewhere along that lines. It was a long time.
Yeah, I mean that's a big deal. He basically rebuilt that program from the ground. They were having a rough decade there, and he's came in the last couple of years and really turned it around. And I mean, Bowling Green's had, with Leffler, we've been good past couple of years, just haven't been able to get over the hump. So
yeah, just that final game.
Yeah, George he kind of made that happen with Tennessee State, where he was able to finally get him over that hump in the FCS. So,
and that's another thing too. It's easy to say and obvious to say that it's going to take time. You don't expect anything to change dramatically overnight, but at the same time, when you look at the resources available and face value, calling a spade, recruitment talent is going to be less at a program like Tennessee State. And you look at what he was able to do there. Again, this is a situation with way more resources, way more recruitability, especially with as, defined and recognizable of a name as he is, because there's the resume and there's the name. And I mean, it really both pieces play into, the whole package there.
And there's the transfer portal thing, how
that is a thing.
Having a big name.
Many people are saying
definitely
this.
the thing. Like, having a big name head coach like this helps out a lot in terms of bringing players to a MAC school. There's that extra appeal there that you have the superstar head coach and have that experience as well.
Yeah, and they also, I mean, you have to look at the fact, though, that this upcoming year, you got to kind of limit your expectations to an extent, because they're still in a basic rebuild mode is what I'm going to say for this upcoming year, because, new coach, a bunch of players, that were a part of the team these past few years are not there anymore. So, I mean, this season, I wouldn't quite expect a ton of fireworks and maybe a bowl win and be contending to go to Detroit. I would be looking for that maybe 2 years from now, 3 years from now, because it takes time.
It does indeed.
Yeah, it does. We're going to do another baseball interjection real quick. They're still in the bottom of the 10th. Bowling Green has one out, and they have Braden Curlis currently on first base. Sam Seidel is currently up to bat with one ball and no strikes thus far. And on deck after him is Garrett Wright. So really strong, hitters from the top of the order for the Falcons, hopefully in position here to put it away. We'll, again, periodically update as things change with that. But Luke Kleinmeyer has a few pieces of things to talk about as well.
Well, I guess I'll just start with soccer as well. Obviously Spring League's happening. And
Wait, is it happening?
Yeah, Spring League, I think men's soccer plays Dayton at 6 at Cochran Stadium. So they play in like 28 minutes if we're doing this at live right now. But actually, I don't have anything related to Spring League. I have something related to a former player now, Josh Erlinson, who just spent his last season with the team last year, signed a 25-day contract with Loudoun United FC in the USL Championship, team located in Virginia. He is playing with his brother, Jacob Erlinson, who's also a former first-round pick for men's soccer. He was picked by the Columbus Crew a couple years back. So the Erlinson siblings actually played together yesterday. Loudoun United played Hartford Athletic, and Josh Erlinson made his professional debut, got on the field for the last 2 minutes, I believe, in that 2-0 win over Hartford Athletic. So pretty cool story there. And also that is now the third different team, if you want to just label it to teams, that both Josh Erlinson and his brother Jacob Erlinson played on. They both played at Huntington University. Then they both played up here at Bowling Green when they both transferred here to go to Division I. And now they both played professional soccer together, which is awesome. Like, it's such a cool story as well. So congratulations to Josh for signing that short-term contract after was on trial for them in the preseason. So hopefully it results into maybe a long-term contract with that team. But also congrats to Jake Burlinson too as well for getting the start and getting a lot of minutes and also representing the BJC men's soccer program well. So that was pretty cool. I saw that yesterday.
Definitely a cool tidbit for them.
I mean, Loudoun United top of the table in the USL Championship, so that's a
pretty cool,
legit squad. I mean, it's awesome to see just players from the U.S. in general who play all 4 years. You know, here they play, you know, maybe JUCO, and then they play D1. You do the full route, and then you can still make it pro because you see, you know, there's the typical route in soccer is to just go academy all the way, but not really play college. Like no professional players outside of the U.S. play college, so. They have a few years on them automatically. Do you know how old is Jacob and Josh right now?
I believe Josh is 24, and I think Jacob's around there too, his mid-20s. Josh played 6 years. That was his 6th year last year, but he was hurt for the year prior. Jacob, I believe, just played 4 and then was drafted. So, yeah, pretty cool. Pretty cool story.
Brief baseball interjection again. There's currently a full count with 1 out with Sam Seidel still at the plate, and he has now struck out, putting them at 2 outs with Garrett Wright up to bat. But Braden Curlis advanced to third after stealing second on the previous bat from Sam Seidel. So 1 base away from putting it away in the bottom of the 10th here, and Garrett Wright at bat. We should pretty shortly see if we're going to more extra innings and Wright's been intentionally walked, so Brady Birchmeyer's going to step up to bat. That's exciting. Can kind of understand that one with as hot as he's been at the bat. And then Caden and Lucas, I want to talk to both of you as well because, you know, we have some transfer portal
Henry's
updates.
in the room as well, Holden.
Well, that's true.
You don't want to talk to me, Holden?
No, Henry, I want to talk to you as
man.
well. I'm just saying because of women's basketball being their primary beat.
Oh, I guess.
We gave you your time at the start. No, I'm playing. But Lucas, if you want to take me away, or Caden, either one really. Toss it up.
Well,
rock, paper, scissors.
Yeah, well, we can talk about it too as well. But I'll start for men's basketball. I mean, transfer update because I know Foster Ross had on the show last week and gave us the whole spiel about the transfer portal. Braylon Green transferred to Eastern Michigan, so that's an in-MAC transfer going from BG to Eastern Michigan. Green was more of a off the bench player for BG for most of the season and played a significant role for the team down the stretch when they had all those injuries. Got better from start to finish. Kind of a big loss. You know, you always need those players that you can rely on either off the bench or someone that could be kind of like a spot starter and come in that starting 5 every now and then. Especially going to an in-conference team as well, like Eastern Michigan. So that's kind of big there. And then obviously with Kate and I, Brooke Simpson, the first women's basketball player to announce where she's heading, she transferred to Loyola Chicago.
Yeah, and I mean, that's a good pickup, I'd say, for them based on her kind of resume. I mean, she didn't play most of this past season, but going back to high school, she scored over 1,000 points despite missing a season due to injury, and on top of that, having a season cut short due to the pandemic. So, I mean, that's a good, like I said, that's a good pickup for Loyola Chicago, especially saying that they scored 58.6 points per game last year, which is not going to cut it in college basketball.
Yeah, and they were a pretty like middle of the pack A10 team, if I do remember.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they were 14, 17 overall. I gotta look at what Caden Knapp wrote actually on bgfalconmedia.com. Look at that, but they were a decent A10 team, and like you mentioned there, Caden, you know, not the most powerful offensively, you know, only averaging 58.1 points per game. And they were 13-17 overall, I should say, and 15-13 in the A10. So that record needs to improve in conference play. But, you know, hopefully Simpson can help them offensively as well. I mean, that's what she was kind of known for coming out of high school, and unfortunately it really just didn't work out at Bowling Green. So, yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, and I think that I would say Fleming is – I'm not going to say Fleming's the most surprising just because, I mean, we kind of expected her to leave because she walked over senior night. We kind of talked about it off air, not with her, just amongst each other. But like we kind of saw the writing on the wall. I would say McGuff was the biggest shocker to me because, I mean, she was in a situation where she started 9 games this past year, and then you have Erica Porter, who had just graduated, So that's a big person underneath that you need to replace in Coach Shamil. I mean, we have Velasco and now Fleming that's gone in the front court. So I think that would have, if she would have stayed, she would have had the potential to get significant minutes.
I think McGuff obviously is a big one too, but Fleming obviously it was the biggest one out of those names.
Yes.
But McGuff was probably the second because she was the only player that probably played a more significant role in the team. I mean, she started 9 games this past year, played 22. I want to say she did work her way back from that injury. It was kind of surprising, but she kind of again worked her way back from injury. She lost her starting spot by Donahue like down the stretch of the season. So maybe she wants to go somewhere where she's going to be an unquestionable starter for Bowling with not in Bowling Green. We don't know what conversations they had. We don't know like what the future plan was for her in BG, but that was definitely kind of surprising because that's also a big miss of player for someone that contributed not only when she started but also contributed off the bench as well.
Right, and I mean on top of that, with Coach Shamil, that's now 7 players that he has to replace.
Yeah, half the team almost.
Yeah. So I mean, and heading into a really very important season for Coach Shamil, that's a tall task.
Yeah, half the team and 3 starters and your two guards, Fleming and Velasco, and your 5, but like pretty much your best offensive 5 too, Erica Porter. So
Yeah. We'll see
Definitely
what happens with it.
A lot to look for them to see how they fill those gaps, supplement those absences next season. We finally have a final from Stellar Field as the Falcons were able to pull away with a victory 7-6 in 10 innings. Brady Birchmile singled through the right side. RBI advanced Curlis to home to seal the win for the Falcons. And I know we talked about it in the first half, but how much better does that make you feel about the weekend?
Yeah, I mean, getting 1 of 3 is a big deal against Miami because it's mostly just in terms of how the max standings are going to kind of change from that. I'm looking at it right now, pulling it up. But Miami was leading they only had 2 losses. Yeah, they're 12-2. Now they're going to be 12-3. Bowling Green will be 11-4 as a result of that. So that brings Miami down just a little bit in the standings. Makes Bowling Green a little bit closer. Kent State still 10-2. Ball State still 9-2. So we mentioned those are the 4 kind of top teams that are going to be carrying out the rest of the year, and Bowling Green pulls a little bit closer to those teams. So.
Absolutely, it feels really, really beneficial to the Falcons to keep that one in reach there, or keep Miami in reach. That potential 1 spot that they were in, like you said, just kind of keeps you closer to the pack. And I don't think it's even as much about slowing them down as it maybe is just keeping yourself closer, because even if it's not going to be that regular season championship, there's still value in that 2 seed, that 3 seed, playing a team that's, by the numbers or by the record worse than you ostensibly. Just feels very, very
that's a huge
valuable.
That's a huge momentum. I mean, to not get swept again. And also, they had a break in between the doubleheader Friday and then play yesterday too. So getting that win too, because they can build off of it. And like Henry said too, that's big when you look at the max standings for the end of the year, especially when you get into seeding and postseason play.
Connor Penrod, 3 scoreless innings in this game. She's typically a closer on typically 1 inning outings, so he really just got stretched out there and did a good job on that.
Yeah.
3 innings. Going into that is a tough situation for a head coach, especially in the last game of a series, because your pitchers are gassed and you're going already through 5. Penrod was the 5th pitcher for Bowling Green, and so do you want to bring someone else in who potentially maybe struggled earlier in the year? Do you leave Penrod in? That's a tough decision that can be wrong either way you pick it sometimes. So clutch for Penrod to hold on to those 3 scoreless innings.
Yeah, and I think that their schedule kind of allowed for that. The fact that you get the break from conference play in the middle of the week. I mean,
yeah, the break between Friday and Sunday.
That Youngstown State game I think should be important because you need to bench, I would say, most of your pitchers and let them continue to rest up. But again, your bats that are hot, leave them in.
Yeah,
for sure.
Definitely a strong.
And,
another strong. Oh,
and
sorry.
Penrod, defending BG Falcon Media Athlete of the Week, for the BG News, good for him. He was sensational. I mean, the Central Michigan. I mean, I know we talked last week about his performance in Central Michigan. I mean, he was outstanding. I mean, that's why he was Athlete of the Week this past week. And again, like Henry said, I mean, he's coming up clutch there, pitching 3 scoreless innings. I mean, it's pretty good.
Certainly the strong performance of the day. Penrod, in the end, pitching 3 full innings, 52 pitches thrown, the most among pitchers, and not allowing any runs over that span. Really, really solid from him. We are, with the conclusion of that, pretty much at the end of what we've got going on. It's certainly a quieter season for us, at least on the fields, with only baseball, softball, and a couple of our smaller sports like track and field going on. But it's certainly not a quiet season for us at the Falcon Media Sports Network, keeping up with, the number of things going on, especially probably most relevantly right now, the Ziggies coming up once again. So certainly, as always, keep tuned in to bgfalconmedia.com as well as BG Falcon Media on YouTube to keep up with Falcon Media Sports Network's content with our recaps, rebroadcasts, highlight packages, and everything else covering everything going on with BG Athletics right now. And you can also check out theziggies.com to keep up with the promotion that is really going to start to ramp up quickly here, I would say, as we close in on that date of the Ziggies, only 17 days away.
Yes, sir. Yep. As you mentioned, just go to ziggies.com for all the pre, during, and post coverage of the Ziggies. It's going to be a lot of fun. Like Cole mentioned, 17 days out, so we're going to really ramp up the promotion aspect this weekend, next week. But fun event. Can't wait to see all of the winners.
As always, if you've missed any of this show or any of our other live broadcasts from Falcon Radio or WBGU 88.1 FM, you can find them by going to BG Falcon Media on YouTube. That's going to do it for us here on a little bit shorter of a show today, but we will be back next week with plenty more where this came from. So for Henry Costco, Lucas Kleinmeyer, and Caden Knapp, I'm Holden Ruck once again saying good night, and I Ziggy.
This broadcast has been a Falcon Media Sports Network production. For more BGSU sports news and updates, follow Falcon Media Sports Network on Twitter X at BG_FMSN, BG Falcon Media on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube, and head over to bgfalconmedia.com.